What a local farmer discovered in her 200-year-old family barn has left historical experts stunned and government officials scrambling for answers. Inside a hidden chamber, sealed away since America's fight for independence, lies evidence of a secret network so crucial to our nation's freedom, it was deliberately erased from history. Before we reveal what was found behind these ancient walls, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow we're sharing another incredible colonial-era discovery that will leave you speechless. The Blackwood Farm stood frozen in time against the rapidly changing landscape of the Berkshire Mountains. While luxury developments and tourist attractions had consumed neighboring properties, the historic 180-acre estate remained stubbornly rooted in its colonial past. At its heart stood an imposing timber barn, built in 1783, its weathered facade and distinctive cupola, a testament to an era when Massachusetts still bore the fresh scars of revolution. Emily Blackwood hadn't planned on becoming the guardian of her family's legacy. At 48, the former history teacher had spent the past decade helping her aging father maintain the property, watching as one by one their neighbors succumbed to developers' offers. But her father's unexpected passing 6 months ago had thrust her into a position she never wanted, sole owner of a historic property she could barely afford to maintain. The latest property tax bill lay unopened on her kitchen table, its presence a constant reminder of the mounting pressures. 3 different development companies had made offers in the past month alone, each one more generous than the last. The most recent would have solved all her financial problems, but something about the old barn kept her from signing away her family's heritage. Local folklore had always hinted at the barn's mysteries. Its massive frame, held together by wooden pegs and traditional joinery that had survived nearly 2.5 centuries, featured architectural elements that didn't match typical colonial design. Sections of the interior seemed to serve no clear purpose, and the pattern of post and beam construction in the northern wall had puzzled architects for generations. The winter of 2024 brought record-breaking storms to the Berkshires, and with them came the first clues that would change everything. Emily had been checking the barn's roof for ice damage when she noticed something odd, shadows falling across the timber beams in patterns that seemed deliberate, reminiscent of symbols she'd seen in her father's Revolutionary War books. That same evening, while sorting through her father's study, she found an old brass key, unlike anything else on the property. Its worn surface bore markings that matched those mysterious patterns in the barn, and tucked beneath it was a fragment of a letter that made her blood run cold. The network must remain hidden. What we've built here goes beyond the war itself. If the British ever discovered the letter's remaining text had been deliberately burned away, but it bore her ancestor William Blackwood's signature and a date, April 17th, 1783. Emily knew from family history that William had been a successful farmer who'd built the barn just after the Revolutionary War ended. But something about the letter's tone suggested there was more to the story. Strange sounds began, emanating from the barn's northern section during particularly cold nights. At first, Emily dismissed them as the normal creaks and groans of an aging structure, but during one severe storm, she heard what sounded like mechanical clicking coming from inside the walls themselves, sounds that no colonial-era barn should make. The local historical society had always celebrated the barn as an excellent example of post-revolutionary architecture, but their records raised more questions than answers. The construction costs documented in William's ledgers far exceeded what a typical barn of that size should have required. Deliveries of iron and brass had come from as far away as Philadelphia, and several payments were made to craftsmen known for their work on military installations rather than agricultural buildings. Emily's research revealed that William Blackwood hadn't been just another colonial farmer. Town records showed he had served as a quartermaster in the Continental Army, but his service records were surprisingly sparse for someone of his rank. More intriguing were the names that appeared in his personal correspondence. Several prominent revolutionary figures had visited the property in the years immediately following the war. As January's bitter winds howled across the Berkshire Hills, Emily began noticing other peculiarities. Certain sections of the barn's walls seemed to block the winter cold more effectively than others, despite being built from the same materials. Metal fittings that should have corroded centuries ago remained mysteriously preserved, and some of the timber joints seemed to conceal spaces that didn't match the barn's visible dimensions. What Emily didn't realize, as she stood in that historic barn pondering her family's legacy, was that she was about to uncover a secret that had remained hidden for nearly 2.5 centuries. Behind those ancient timbers lay evidence of a clandestine operation that had helped secure American independence and might now help secure her family's future. But she wasn't the only one about to take an interest in the Blackwood barn's mysteries, and some secrets she would soon discover were never meant to be found. The brass key felt unusually heavy in Emily's hand as she sat at her father's old desk, surrounded by boxes of family documents she'd never known existed. The winter storm that had battered the Berkshires all week had forced her inside, giving her time to properly examine her father's study. What she found there would shake her understanding of not just her family's history, but of the American Revolution itself. Hidden behind a loose panel in her father's antique filing cabinet, she discovered a leather-bound journal dated 1783, its pages filled with her ancestor, William Blackwood's precise handwriting. The journal's first entry, dated just after the Revolutionary War's end, spoke of secure locations and networks of preservation. Most intriguing were the detailed sketches of mechanical devices that seemed far too sophisticated for the colonial era. "The committee insists on absolute secrecy," one passage read. "What we've constructed here must remain hidden until the proper time. The technology we've preserved could change the course of nations or destroy them if found by the wrong hands." The words sent a chill down Emily's spine. What technology could have existed in 1783 that would still be considered dangerous today? Further investigation of her father's study revealed more surprising connections. Tucked away in various hidden compartments, behind books, beneath floorboards, inside hollow table legs, she found fragments of a story that had been deliberately scattered to prevent its discovery. Her father, it seemed, had spent decades collecting these pieces, though he'd never shared his research with her. Among the documents was a series of letters between William Blackwood and Benjamin Thompson, a name that caught Emily's attention. Thompson had been a prominent scientist of the Revolutionary period who later fled to Europe, where he made significant contributions to early industrial technology. The letters contained cryptic references to the repository and preserved innovations, along with complex mathematical formulae that seemed out of place for the 18th century. Emily's own background in teaching history proved invaluable as she began piecing together the puzzle. The dates of certain deliveries to the farm corresponded with known gaps in Thompson's scientific records. More intriguingly, several other prominent inventors and military engineers of the period had visited the Blackwood property in the months following the barn's construction. A map from 1784 showed the Blackwood property marked with a symbol she'd never seen in historical records. A compass rose overlaid with what appeared to be mechanical gears. The same symbol appeared subtly, carved into several of the barn's supporting beams, visible only when the light hit them at certain angles. Similar markings had been reported at other Revolutionary War sites, though historians had never agreed on their significance. The discovery that truly caught her attention was a letter from George Washington himself, dated November 1783. While much of it was written in code, one clear sentence stood out: Your barn shall serve as the first repository, Mr. Blackwood. Guard well what we have entrusted to your care, for the future of our nation may depend upon its preservation." Emily's research was interrupted by an unexpected visit from Dr. Sarah Chen, a professor of Revolutionary War Studies at Williams College. The historian had been investigating similar anomalies at other colonial-era sites across New England. "These buildings," Dr. Chen explained, examining the barn's exterior with growing excitement, "they all share certain architectural features that don't match period construction techniques. It's as if they were designed to hide something that required preservation for centuries." Together, they found more evidence that the barn was more than it appeared. The northern wall's unusual beam pattern, when mapped out, aligned perfectly with astronomical calculations found in Williams' journal. The metal fittings that had mysteriously resisted corrosion bore maker's marks from a Philadelphia foundry known for producing military equipment, a foundry that had mysteriously burned down in 1784. All its records destroyed. Dr. Chen's expertise helped decode more of the cryptic documents. "Look at these measurements," she said, pointing to numbers in Williams' journal. "They're expressed in metric units, which weren't used in America until long after the Revolution. And these materials, some of them weren't supposed to exist until the mid-1800s. It's as if your ancestor had access to scientific knowledge that was far ahead of his time." The historian shared her own discoveries from other sites. Similar barns and buildings had been constructed across the former colonies in the years immediately following the Revolution. All had been built by men with connections to both the Continental Army and early American scientific societies. All featured the same mysterious architectural elements, and all had been maintained by the same families for generations. As evening approached and Dr. Chen prepared to leave, she made one final observation that would prove crucial. The brass key Emily had found bore markings that matched a sequence of numbers in Williams' journal, numbers that corresponded to astronomical events. "Your ancestor," Dr. Chen suggested, "wasn't just building a barn. He was creating some kind of sophisticated time lock, ensuring whatever he was hiding couldn't be accessed until specific conditions were met." Emily stood in the gathering darkness, watching snow swirl around the barn's ancient timbers. The structure that had been part of her family's legacy for over 2 centuries now seemed like something else entirely. Not just a barn, but a carefully designed vault, preserving secrets that had waited more than 200 years to be discovered. What she didn't know then was that others had also been searching for these repositories. As Dr. Chen's car disappeared down the snow-covered drive, another vehicle was making its way toward the Berkshires, one carrying people who had spent decades tracking down the Revolutionary-era secrets and who wouldn't let anything stand in the way of their discovery. The dawn that broke over Blackwood Farm brought more than just the weak winter sunlight. It brought answers. Emily had spent the night studying the astronomical calculations in Williams' journal, and as the morning sun struck the barn's northern wall, something remarkable happened. The shadows cast by the seemingly random arrangement of beams created a pattern that perfectly matched the diagram on the journal's final page. Dr. Chen arrived early, accompanied by Dr. Marcus Thompson, an architectural historian specializing in colonial-era structures. "I couldn't sleep after what we found yesterday," she admitted, pulling sophisticated scanning equipment from her car. "And when I shared your discoveries with Marcus, he insisted on coming immediately." The historian's excitement was palpable. As he circled the barn, his trained eye catching details others had missed for centuries. "These aren't just support beams," Dr. Thompson explained, running his hand along the weathered timber. "They're part of a sophisticated astronomical calendar. The entire barn is essentially a giant mechanical almanac designed to mark specific dates and times." He pointed out how certain joints had been engineered to shift slightly with the seasons, creating different shadow patterns throughout the year. The morning's investigation revealed more surprises. Using ground-penetrating radar, they discovered that the barn's foundation wasn't typical for the period. Instead of the expected fieldstone base, they found evidence of precisely cut granite blocks arranged in a complex geometric pattern. More intriguing were the void spaces that appeared in the scans, spaces that shouldn't exist according to the barn's visible dimensions. Emily shared William's letters about the Philadelphia foundry. "Look at these material specifications," Dr. Thompson said, examining the documents. "These alloys. They're describing metallurgical techniques that weren't supposed to exist until the Industrial Revolution. The level of precision required for these components, it's simply not possible for 1783. Unless," his voice trailed off as he compared the letters with his own research notes, "I've seen similar descriptions before in Benjamin Thompson's later scientific papers from Europe, but those innovations weren't published until the 1790s. How did your ancestor have this information a decade earlier?" The answer came from an unexpected source. As they examined the barn's interior, Emily's phone rang. Her cousin Michael, a meteorologist with a passion for historical astronomy. She'd sent him the astronomical calculations from William's journal the night before. "Emily, those numbers aren't just random dates," he explained excitedly. "They're describing a specific astronomical alignment that only occurs once every 241 years. And guess what? That alignment is happening next week." Dr. Chen's equipment detected something else, subtle temperature variations in the barn's northern wall that couldn't be explained by normal physics. Certain sections remained consistently warmer than their surroundings, regardless of the winter cold. When they mapped these heat signatures against William's diagrams, they formed a pattern that matched the mysterious gear and compass symbol. The real breakthrough came mid-morning. Dr. Thompson discovered that one of the barn's main support posts could be rotated slightly, but only when the sunlight hit it at the exact angle shown in William's calculations. The movement was minimal, just a quarter turn, but it triggered a series of clicks within the wall. Decades of rust and dirt had stiffened the mechanism, but it still functioned after more than 2 centuries. "Your ancestor wasn't just a farmer or a quartermaster," Dr. Chen said, her voice filled with awe. "He was part of something much bigger. These repositories, they weren't just hiding places. They were part of an organized effort to preserve something important, something that had to be kept secret until the right moment." As they worked, Emily noticed unfamiliar vehicles passing by the farm with increasing frequency. Dr. Thompson grew visibly nervous when a black SUV drove past for the 3rd time. "We're not the only ones interested in these sites," he admitted. "There are organizations that have been searching for these repositories for generations. Some want to preserve them, others." He left the implications unspoken. The afternoon brought snow flurries and an unexpected visitor. An elderly man appeared at the barn door, introducing himself as James Harrison. His presence caused Dr. Chen to pause in surprise. "Professor Harrison, the colonial technology expert." The man nodded, his eyes fixed on the barn's interior with an intensity that suggested more than academic interest. "I've been tracking these repositories for 50 years, Harrison explained, pulling worn documents from his leather briefcase. "Your ancestor, William Blackwood, was part of a secret group of Revolutionary War inventors and scientists. They called themselves the Guardians of Progress. What they built, what they preserved." He shook his head in amazement. "It could change everything we think we know about early American technology." Harrison's documents included partial blueprints that matched elements of the barn's unusual construction, but they also showed something more, a hidden chamber whose dimensions aligned perfectly with the void spaces they'd detected in their scans. The entrance, according to the plans, could only be accessed when specific astronomical and mechanical conditions were met. As the short winter day drew to a close, Emily realized they were in a race against time. The astronomical alignment Michael had identified was just days away. If William's journals were correct, that alignment was crucial to accessing whatever lay hidden within the barn's walls. But the increasing drive-bys of mysterious vehicles suggested others had reached the same conclusion. That night, after the others had left, Emily sat in her father's study, reviewing everything they'd discovered. The brass key felt heavier than ever in her hand, its worn surface reflecting the desk lamp's light. Tomorrow, they would begin the careful process of documenting and testing each mechanism they'd found. But as she studied her ancestors' journals, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, and that they weren't the only ones preparing to uncover the barn's centuries-old secrets. The morning brought new pressures. To Blackwood Farm, Emily awoke to find 3 messages from her bank regarding overdue property taxes and an email from Sterling Development Corporation raising their offer for the property to $7 million. With a 48-hour deadline for acceptance, but it was the 4th message that truly caught her attention, a warning from Professor Harrison about unmarked vehicles spotted near other historical sites linked to the Guardians of Progress. Over breakfast, Emily shared the developments with Dr. Chen and Dr. Thompson, who had arrived early to continue their investigation. Sterling Development isn't just making random offers, Dr. Thompson revealed, pulling up research on his laptop. They've been buying properties connected to Revolutionary War sites across New England. 6 months ago, they acquired the Thompson estate in New Hampshire, another suspected Guardian repository. Dr. Chen's face darkened at the news. The Thompson site was mysteriously demolished a week after purchase, despite its historical protection status. By the time preservation experts arrived, anything hidden there was long gone. She spread out satellite images showing before and after views of the Thompson property. The colonial-era buildings had been completely razed, replaced by equipment, storage facilities. The immediate threat of development forced them to accelerate their investigation. Professor Harrison arrived mid-morning with additional scanning equipment and, more importantly, a complete translation key for the coded sections of William's journals. The Guardians used a sophisticated encryption system, he explained, setting up his equipment. Each repository had its own unique code, but they all followed similar patterns based on astronomical calculations. As they worked to decode the documents, Emily noticed more unmarked vehicles passing by the farm. A black SUV had parked at the end of her driveway, its tinted windows concealing its occupants. Dr. Thompson made a discreet call to colleagues at the State Historical Preservation Office, requesting emergency protected status for the property. It won't stop them completely, he admitted, but it might buy us some time. The decoded journal passages revealed something unexpected. William Blackwood hadn't just built the barn as a repository, he'd designed it to protect its contents from specific threats. Look at these diagrams, Professor Harrison pointed out. The astronomical alignments aren't just for access. They're part of a sophisticated security system. Try to force entry at the wrong time, and whatever's hidden inside could be destroyed. The afternoon brought snow and an unwelcome visitor. A man in an expensive suit introduced himself as James Sterling, CEO of Sterling Development. His friendly demeanor couldn't mask the implied threat in his words. "Miss Blackwood, I understand you've had some interesting visitors lately," he smiled, glancing at the research equipment visible through the barn doors. "Our offer is extremely generous, but it expires tomorrow. After that, well, maintaining historical properties can be so expensive." Emily stood her ground, but Sterling's visit had shaken her. The bank's threatening letters and mounting preservation costs felt even more pressing. That evening, gathered in her father's study, the team assessed their situation. The astronomical alignment happens in 3 days, Dr. Chen noted, reviewing Michael's calculations. But sterling development isn't going to wait that long. Professor Harrison made a suggestion that surprised everyone. There might be a way to access the chamber before the alignment, but it's risky. The Guardians built emergency protocols into their repositories, methods of early access for extreme circumstances. He pulled out a worn leather case containing delicate brass instruments. These were recovered from another site years ago. They're designed to simulate the alignment conditions, but using them could potentially trigger the repository's self-preservation mechanisms. The decision weighed heavily on Emily. Forcing early access might damage or destroy whatever her ancestor had hidden, but waiting for the proper alignment might mean losing everything to sterling development. The property's historical protection status was still pending, and Sterling's resources could easily tie up the process in legal battles until it was too late. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. While examining the barn's foundation, Dr. Thompson discovered markings that matched entries in William's journal. These aren't just construction marks, he realized. They're a backup sequence. Instructions for safely accessing the repository under duress. Your ancestor built in a failsafe. The team worked late into the night, documenting every detail of the barn's unusual features. The temperature variations in the walls had grown more pronounced, and the mechanical clicking sounds had become more frequent. The structure is responding to the approaching alignment, Professor Harrison explained. It's like a giant timepiece waking up after centuries of sleep. As midnight approached, they made a disturbing discovery. Sterling Development's offer wasn't unique to Blackwood Farm. Other historical properties connected to the Guardians had received similar proposals, all with the same deadline. It was a coordinated effort to secure multiple repositories before the alignment. They know what's coming, Dr. Chen said grimly. They're trying to get control of all the sites at once. Emily spent hours reviewing her options. The property taxes alone would consume her savings, and the bank was threatening to call in the farm's outstanding loans. The historical protection filing was moving slowly through bureaucratic channels. Sterling Development's offer would solve all her financial problems, but at what cost to history? What had her ancestor protected that was worth so much sacrifice? In the early hours of the morning, as she studied the brass key by lamplight, Emily noticed something she'd overlooked. Tiny markings along its shaft matched a sequence of numbers in William's journal. Numbers that corresponded to tomorrow's date. Her ancestor had left them an alternative, a way to protect the repository's contents without waiting for the full alignment. But using it would mean acting immediately, before Sterling Development could make their next move. As dawn approached, Emily made her decision. They couldn't wait 3 days for the astronomical alignment. Whatever William Blackwood had hidden in the barn's secret chamber needed to be found now. But as she gathered the team for an emergency meeting, headlights appeared on the farm's access road. Multiple vehicles were approaching, and this time they weren't just driving by. The approaching vehicles forced an immediate decision. Emily quickly led her team through the barn's main doors, securing them from the inside. Dr. Thompson's military background, something he hadn't mentioned until now, proved invaluable as he quickly assessed their situation. 4 vehicles, probably 8 to 10 people. They'll try to wait us out, but that alignment sequence you found might be our only chance. Professor Harrison worked quickly, setting up his astronomical instruments while Dr. Chen documented everything with precision. Photography. The brass key Emily had discovered proved to be more than just a simple lock mechanism. It was a sophisticated piece of 18th century engineering with internal components that responded to specific alignments of its carved markings. Your ancestors. Genius was in the simplicity, Harrison explained, examining the key under specialized lighting. These marks appear decorative, but they're actually a mechanical code. When aligned correctly, they trigger internal mechanisms that would have been impossible to duplicate with colonial-era technology. The question is, where exactly does it fit? The answer came from William's journal. Emily had spent the night memorizing the coded passages, and now one particular entry stood out. Look for the shadow of the eagle when dawn's light splits the winter beam. The passage had seemed meaningless before, but now, as their flashlights played across the barn's northern wall, a pattern emerged. One of the support beams, previously assumed to be structural, cast a shadow that perfectly matched the outline of an eagle when illuminated from the correct angle. At its center, nearly invisible unless you knew exactly where to look, was a small brass fitting worn smooth by centuries of exposure. The timing has to be exact, Professor Harrison warned, checking his calculations. These mechanisms were designed to activate only under specific conditions. Try it at the wrong moment, and we might trigger the repository's self-preservation protocols. Outside, they could hear vehicles positioning themselves around the barn. Emily took a deep breath and inserted the key. The brass fitting accepted it smoothly, as if it had been waiting for this moment for centuries. Following the sequence described, in William's journal, she turned the key precisely 3/4 rotation clockwise, then 1/4 counterclockwise. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a deep mechanical rumbling began somewhere within the walls. The sound of multiple mechanisms activating echoed through the barn's ancient timbers. Dr. Chen's monitoring equipment showed temperature spikes in several locations, and the air filled with the scent of aged metal and oil. "It's accepting the sequence," Harrison breathed, watching his instruments. "The repository is opening for the first time in over 200 years. The wall section in front of them, which had appeared solid for generations, began to shift. Hidden counterweights and pulleys, engineered with extraordinary precision, moved massive wooden panels that had concealed a doorway large enough to walk through. The revealed chamber entrance was a testament to revolutionary-era engineering. Brass fittings gleamed as if newly polished, their surfaces protected by some unknown preservation method. The door frame itself was a complex combination of wood and metal, designed to maintain structural integrity for centuries. As they prepared to enter, a pounding came at the barn's main doors. "Miss Blackwood," Sterling's voice carried clearly through the old wood. "Whatever you're doing in there needs to stop immediately. We have the legal right to inspect any historical structures we're considering for purchase." They ignored the interruption, focusing instead on the extraordinary scene before them. The hidden doorway opened into a corridor that shouldn't have existed according to any known plans of the barn. The walls were lined with what appeared to be brass and copper. Conduits and strange gauges marked with unfamiliar measurements covered several panels. "This technology," Dr. Thompson whispered, examining the nearest gauge. "It's not just ahead of its time. Some of this shouldn't even be possible." The instruments, despite their age, appeared to be functioning, responding to their presence, with subtle movements of their indicators. Professor Harrison's expertise provided crucial context. "The Guardians weren't just inventors," he explained, documenting everything with trembling hands. "They discovered scientific principles that shouldn't have been understood until the 20th century. But they realized that releasing this knowledge too quickly could be dangerous. So they built these repositories, preserving their discoveries until humanity was ready." The corridor led them deeper into the hidden section of the barn. The temperature grew noticeably warmer, and the humming of active machinery became more pronounced. Emily's flashlight beam revealed more evidence of her ancestors' extraordinary work, diagrams etched into metal plates, mathematical formulae that seemed impossibly advanced, and mechanical systems that defied historical context. Dr. Chen found a logbook, its pages preserved by some unknown method, that detailed the repository's construction. "This is incredible," she breathed, carefully turning pages. They weren't working alone. There are references to other sites, other discoveries. This was part of a network that spanned the entire colonial territory. The most stunning discovery came at the corridor's end. A circular chamber, at least 30 feet in diameter, housed what appeared to be some kind of demonstration model. At its center stood a device that combined elements of astronomy, physics, and engineering in ways that shouldn't have been possible in the 18th century. "It's some kind of teaching tool," Professor Harrison realized, examining the device with growing excitement. The Guardians weren't just preserving their discoveries. They were preparing to share them. This chamber was designed to activate when humanity reached the right level of scientific understanding. Outside, the sound of vehicles repositioning suggested their visitors were preparing for a longer siege. But inside the repository, time seemed to stand still. The chamber hummed with energy that had waited centuries to be discovered. Its purpose finally ready to be revealed. Emily found another journal, this one written in her ancestor's bold hand, dated just days before the repository was sealed. "To those who find this chamber," it began, "know that what we preserved here is only the beginning. The discoveries contained in this and other repositories will change humanity's understanding of science itself. But they must be revealed in the proper sequence, at the proper time." As they stood in the chamber, surrounded by evidence of revolutionary-era genius that defied explanation, a new sound echoed through the barn's ancient timbers. The astronomical alignment was beginning, days ahead of schedule, triggered by their activation of the emergency protocols. Whatever William Blackwood and the Guardians had preserved was about to reveal itself, ready or not. The chamber's activation triggered something none of them had expected. As the astronomical alignment sequence initiated, the device at the center of the room began to transform. Panels shifted, brass components rotated, and hidden mechanisms whirred to life with a precision that seemed impossible for their age. The air itself seemed charged with potential, carrying the scent of ozone and aged metal. "This is extraordinary," Professor Harrison breathed, his instruments recording everything. "The power source, it's not just mechanical. They had access to principles of energy generation that weren't supposed to be discovered until the late 19th century. The device's core began emitting a soft blue glow that defied conventional explanation. Dr. Chen's expertise in Revolutionary War technology proved crucial as she identified components that shouldn't have existed. "Look at these alloys," she said, examining a panel with specialized equipment. "The metallurgical knowledge required to create these materials, it's at least a century ahead of its time. The Guardians had mastered techniques that modern science is only now beginning to understand. The commotion outside the barn had changed character. Through the ancient walls, they could hear new voices, official voices. "Federal agents," someone called. "This site is now under government protection. All unauthorized personnel must leave the premises immediately." The sound of vehicles departing suggested Sterling and his team were retreating, at least temporarily. Moments later, a controlled knock came at the barn's main door. "Dr. Thompson, this is Agent Sarah Marshall, Historical Sciences Division. We need to speak with you immediately." Thompson's face showed recognition at the name, and he quickly moved to respond. "I worked with the Historical Sciences Division years ago," he explained to Emily. "They're a specialized unit that deals with significant historical discoveries, especially ones with technological implications. If they're here, they've been monitoring this situation for a while. The federal team that entered the barn was clearly prepared for what they might find. Led by Agent Marshall, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, they carried sophisticated monitoring equipment and wore expressions that suggested they'd seen similar sights before. "We've been tracking Guardian repositories for decades," Marshall explained, showing credentials that went well beyond normal federal identification. "What you've discovered here isn't unique, but it might be the most intact example we've found. The Blackwood site is special. It's what the Guardians called a primary repository." The agent's team quickly established a security perimeter, while Marshall shared what she could. The Historical Sciences Division had documented evidence of at least 12 Guardian repositories across the former colonies. Some had been lost to time or development, others had self-destructed when discovered improperly, but a few had survived, waiting for the right moment to reveal their secrets. "Your ancestor and his colleagues weren't just brilliant inventors," Marshall continued, examining the activated chamber with obvious reverence. "They were part of a group that made discoveries so advanced they feared the implications of releasing them too quickly. The repositories were their solution, a way to preserve knowledge until humanity was ready to receive it." Professor Harrison's instruments had detected something new, a signal emanating from the central device that seemed to be reaching out to something. "It's not just this repository," he realized, checking his readings. "The activation sequence is triggering responses from other sites. They're communicating with each other." Dr. Chen found documentation that supported this theory. Hidden compartments in the chamber's walls contained detailed maps showing the locations of other repositories. Each site specialized in different aspects of the Guardian's discoveries. Some focused on energy generation, others on materials science or communications technology. "The Blackwood repository appears to be a coordination hub," Agent Marshall explained, comparing the maps to her own documents. "The astronomical alignment isn't just about opening the chamber, it's about synchronizing the entire network. What you've triggered here is affecting Guardian sites across the country." Emily discovered more of her ancestors' journals, these written in a code that seemed to unlock itself as the chamber's activation progressed. William's words painted a picture of an organization far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. The Guardians hadn't just been preserving individual discoveries, they were protecting an entire alternative path of technological development. "Your ancestor understood something crucial," Marshall said, reading over Emily's shoulder. "Technology without wisdom is dangerous." The Guardians didn't just hide their discoveries, they built in safeguards to ensure they'd only be revealed when humanity had developed the ethical framework to use them responsibly. The central device's transformation continued, revealing layers of complexity that left even the federal experts astounded. Holographic displays, generated by technology that shouldn't have existed in the 18th century, began projecting detailed technical schematics into the air above the machine. These aren't just technical drawings, Dr. Thompson realized, studying the projections. They're teaching tools. The Guardians designed this chamber to educate as well as preserve. Each revelation is structured to build upon existing knowledge, ensuring proper understanding before moving to more advanced concepts. Outside, more federal resources arrived. Teams of scientists, historians, and security experts established a professional operation around the farm. Sterling Development's threats had been neutralized. The site was now under federal protection, its historical significance beyond dispute. But Emily's role hadn't ended with the federal takeover. Agent Marshall made that clear as they watched. The chamber continued its activation sequence. The Guardians built biological markers into their security systems, she explained. Direct descendants of the original members have unique access rights, You're not just the owner of this property, Miss Blackwood. You're a crucial part of its activation protocols. As if in response to Marshall's words, the central device emitted a new sequence of signals. The holographic displays shifted, focusing on a specific section of the chamber wall. There, previously invisible markings began to glow with an inner light, revealing yet another layer of the repository's secrets. "This is just the beginning," Professor Harrison said, his voice filled with wonder. "What we're seeing here, it's going to change our understanding of American history, of technological development itself. The question is, are we truly ready for what the Guardians preserved? The answer to that question would soon prove more complex than any of them could have imagined." As the chamber's activation continued, new signals began reaching out across the centuries-old network of repositories. The Guardian's legacy was awakening, and with it, secrets that had waited more than 200 years to be revealed. Dawn broke over Blackwood Farm to reveal a transformed landscape. The federal presence had grown overnight, with specialized equipment and temporary structures surrounding the historical barn. Scientists and researchers from various government agencies worked in coordinated shifts, documenting every aspect of the Guardian repository as it continued its awakening sequence. Emily watched from her father's study as another convoy of vehicles arrived, these bearing markings from the Smithsonian Institution. Agent Marshall approached the house, carrying a tablet displaying real-time data from across the country. "It's happening exactly as your ancestor predicted," she said, showing Emily a map dotted with glowing points. "Other repositories are responding to our activation. The network is coming alive." Dr. Chen burst into the study, her usual academic composure replaced by barely contained excitement. "You need to see this," she insisted, leading them back to the barn. Inside the chamber, the holographic displays had evolved, now showing a complex web of connections, linking known Guardian sites across the former colonies. "These aren't just separate repositories," Professor Harrison explained, his instruments tracking the energy signatures. "They're nodes in an interconnected network, each one preserving different aspects of the Guardian's discoveries. Your ancestors' site appears to be a primary hub. It's coordinating the entire awakening sequence. The central device had continued its transformation overnight. What had initially appeared to be a demonstration model had revealed itself as something far more sophisticated, a control interface for the entire Guardian network. As they watched, new symbols appeared in the holographic display, each corresponding to a different repository location. "Look at this pattern," Dr. Thompson said, comparing the display to colonial-era maps. "The repositories aren't randomly placed. They form a geometric pattern across the landscape, each site positioned with incredible precision." The Guardians weren't just hiding their discoveries, they were creating a vast technological infrastructure. Agent Marshall's team had made progress decoding more of William's journals. The Guardians, it seemed, had discovered principles of science and technology that went far beyond their era's understanding. But rather than risk these discoveries being misused, they created a sophisticated network of repositories, each designed to preserve and protect different aspects of their knowledge. "Your ancestor was brilliant," Marshall told Emily, showing her newly decoded passages. He and the other Guardians realized that rapid technological advancement without corresponding ethical development could be dangerous. So they built this network, not just to preserve their discoveries, but to guide humanity's technological evolution. The morning brought new revelations as other sites began reporting their findings. In Virginia, a repository hidden beneath an old plantation house had activated, revealing preserved documents about advanced energy generation. A site in Pennsylvania, concealed within a colonial iron works, contained information about materials science centuries ahead of its time. Dr. Chen's analysis of the communication patterns between sites revealed something extraordinary. The repositories aren't just sharing information, she explained, tracking the signals. They're assessing our current technological level, comparing it to predetermined benchmarks. The Guardians built in safeguards to ensure their discoveries would only be revealed when humanity was ready for them. Emily found herself at the center of these revelations. As a direct descendant of William Blackwood, she had unique access to certain aspects of the repository's systems. The genetic markers the Guardians had engineered into their security protocols recognized her DNA, allowing her to activate controls that remained locked to others. They thought of everything, Professor Harrison marveled, watching Emily interact with the holographic interface. The Guardians didn't just preserve their discoveries, they preserved the wisdom needed to use them properly. Each revelation comes with built-in ethical guidelines and practical limitations. The federal teams had managed to access some of the repository's basic technological archives. What they found there challenged everything known about colonial-era science. The Guardians had understood principles of quantum mechanics, advanced metallurgy and energy generation that wouldn't be rediscovered until the 20th century. This isn't just about technology, Agent Marshall explained during an emergency briefing. The Guardians created a roadmap for human development. Each discovery builds on the last, ensuring proper understanding before revealing more advanced concepts. They weren't just thinking about their own time, they were planning for centuries of human advancement. As the day progressed, more evidence emerged of the network's sophistication. The repositories weren't simple storage facilities. They were active research centers, preserved in a state of suspended animation for over 2 centuries. Each site contained laboratories, testing facilities, and documentation centers, all waiting to be reactivated at the proper time. Emily discovered personal notes from her ancestor that shed light on the Guardians' motivation. During the Revolution, William and his colleagues had witnessed both the potential and the dangers of rapid technological advancement. They had seen how new weapons and innovations could change the course of history, and they had decided to ensure that future innovations would be guided by wisdom rather than just capability. The activation sequence continued to spread across the network. Each repository that awakened added new layers of understanding to the Guardian's legacy. The holographic displays in the Blackwood chamber became increasingly complex, showing connections and relationships that spanned centuries of hidden development. They created a parallel path of technological evolution, Dr. Thompson realized, studying the patterns. One that emphasized harmony with natural principles rather than their exploitation. The Guardians weren't just preserving individual discoveries, they were protecting an entirely different approach to human advancement. As evening approached, the implications of their discovery continued to expand. The Guardian network wasn't just a historical curiosity or a technological treasure trove. It was a carefully designed system for guiding human development. The repositories contained not only advanced scientific knowledge, but also the wisdom needed to use it responsibly. Emily stood in the chamber that had changed everything, watching the holographic displays dance with centuries-old light. Her ancestors' legacy had turned out to be far more than just a family farm or a historical barn. It was part of a vast network designed to help humanity navigate its own advancement, a network that was now awakening to fulfill its long-dormant purpose. But as the repository network continued its activation sequence, new questions emerged. What other discoveries lay waiting in the Guardian sites? How would this ancient knowledge integrate with modern technology? And perhaps most importantly, was humanity truly ready for what the Guardians had preserved? The second day of the repository's activation brought unexpected personal revelations. Emily woke before dawn, drawn to the barn by what she could only describe as an inexplicable certainty. Something was changing in the chamber, something that called to her on a level beyond normal understanding. "Your genetic connection to the repository is stronger than we initially thought," Agent Marshall explained, watching Emily interact naturally with systems that baffled even their most experienced scientists. The Guardians didn't just preserve their knowledge, they encoded certain aspects of their understanding into their descendants' DNA. Professor Harrison's latest analysis supported this theory. "Look at these brainwave patterns," he said, showing Emily her scan results. "When you're in the chamber, your neural activity matches frequencies we've detected in the repository's communication system. You're not just accessing the technology, you're understanding it on an instinctive level." The morning's discoveries revealed why this connection was so important. The central device had begun displaying information that only activated in Emily's presence. Holographic sequences that appeared scrambled to others resolved into clear technical schematics when she approached. The Guardians had created a literal biological key to their most important discoveries. Dr. Chen found references to this system in newly decoded documents. They called it inherited wisdom, she explained, translating the ancient text. The Guardians knew their discoveries could be dangerous if misunderstood. By linking certain knowledge to their bloodlines, they ensured that understanding would develop gradually across generations. Emily's presence triggered new revelations throughout the chamber. Hidden compartments responded to her touch, revealing preserved documents and devices that had waited centuries to be rediscovered. Each artifact came with what appeared to be genetic memory triggers, information that became clear only to those carrying specific Guardian bloodlines. "Your father knew about this," Agent Marshall revealed, sharing a classified file. "We found evidence that he'd been preparing you for this role your entire life. Those history lessons he insisted on, the engineering puzzles he gave you as toys, he was activating inherited knowledge that had been dormant in your DNA." The revelation hit Emily hard. Her father's recent passing had left so many questions unanswered, but now she understood his lifelong dedication to preserving the farm. He'd known the repository would awaken in his daughter's lifetime, and he'd done everything possible to prepare her for this moment. Dr. Thompson's research team made another breakthrough mid-morning. The repository's security systems didn't just recognize Guardian bloodlines, they actively responded to them. In Emily's presence, the chamber's defensive mechanisms shifted from protection mode to educational mode, revealing teaching sequences designed to help descendants understand their inherited legacy. The Guardians created a multi-generational education system, Professor Harrison explained, documenting the process. Each generation of descendants receives understanding appropriate to their era. As humanity's knowledge advances, more of the inherited wisdom becomes accessible. The personal nature of these revelations extended beyond just information. Emily discovered that her intuitive understanding of the repository's technology went deeper than mere recognition. When she focused on specific systems, memories that weren't her own surfaced. Technical knowledge and ethical considerations passed down through centuries of genetic preservation. "Your ancestor wasn't just hiding technology," Dr. Chen said, watching Emily work. "He was protecting a different way of thinking about scientific advancement. The Guardians believed that true progress required a balance between innovation and wisdom. They encoded that philosophy into their descendants' DNA. The federal teams had established a permanent research facility around the barn, but they found themselves increasingly reliant on Emily's inherited understanding. Equipment that baffled their experts responded naturally to her touch. Complex ethical protocols that had stymied their researchers made intuitive sense to her. This is why Sterling Development was so interested in Guardian descendants, Agent Marshall explained. They weren't just after the repositories. They wanted access to the genetic keys needed to fully unlock them. Your DNA is literally part of the security system. As afternoon approached, Emily's connection to the repository deepened. The holographic displays began showing her personal messages from William Blackwood himself, recordings preserved through centuries of technological stasis. Her ancestor's image appeared before her, as clear as if he stood in the chamber. He stood. "My dear descendant," the recording began, "if you're seeing this, you've begun to access the inherited wisdom we preserved. What we discovered during the revolution wasn't just advanced technology, it was a fundamental understanding of how human knowledge should develop. The repository network isn't just a collection of innovations, it's a guide for humanity's ethical and technological evolution." The message continued, revealing more about the Guardian's purpose. They had created the repositories during a time of great change, when they saw how technological advancement without ethical development could lead to destruction. Their solution was to preserve their discoveries in a way that ensured wisdom would accompany knowledge. "Your genetic heritage isn't just about accessing information," William's recording explained. "It's about understanding the responsibility that comes with advanced knowledge. Each Guardian descendant carries not just the key to our discoveries, but the accumulated wisdom of generations who protected them." Emily spent hours absorbing these revelations, her inherited memories helping her understand concepts that should have taken years to master. The chamber responded to her growing awareness, revealing more of its secrets as her understanding deepened. As evening fell, Professor Harrison made an observation that put everything in new perspective. "The repository isn't just teaching you," he said, reviewing his data. "It's learning from you, too. Your interactions with the systems are helping it understand our current era, allowing it to adjust its revelations accordingly." The implications were staggering. The Guardian Network wasn't just a static collection of preserved knowledge. It was an adaptive system designed to evolve with humanity. Through descendants like Emily, it could assess humanity's readiness for each new level of discovery. But as Emily's connection to the repository strengthened, new questions emerged. What other abilities lay dormant in her inherited wisdom? How would this genetic legacy affect future generations? And what responsibilities came with being a living key to humanity's technological evolution? The third day of the repository's activation brought revelations that transcended everyone's expectations. As dawn broke over Blackwood Farm, Emily's genetic connection to the Guardian systems had grown strong enough to access deeper levels of the preserved knowledge. What she found there challenged not just historical understanding, but humanity's view of its own technological development. The repositories weren't just hiding advanced technology, she explained to the assembled research team, accessing memories that felt as natural as her own. They were preserving an entirely different path of scientific development, one based on principles we're only beginning to rediscover now. Professor Harrison's instruments detected something remarkable as Emily worked with the chamber's systems. The repository wasn't just responding to her presence, it was actively adapting its educational protocols to match modern scientific understanding. "It's like a bridge between two different technological evolutions," he observed, watching data streams that showed both colonial era and contemporary scientific principles working in harmony. Dr. Chen made a breakthrough while studying William's personal journals. "The Guardians didn't discover this knowledge by accident," she revealed. "During the revolution, they encountered something that changed their understanding of technological development. These repositories weren't just built to preserve their discoveries. They were designed to help humanity reconnect with knowledge it had somehow lost." The morning's activation sequence revealed new chambers hidden even deeper within the barn's structure. Each room contained innovations that seemed to defy historical context completely. Agent Marshall's team documented devices that demonstrated principles of quantum mechanics, energy generation, and materials science that modern technology was only beginning to explore. "Your ancestor and the other guardians," Marshall explained. To Emily, they found evidence of advanced scientific understanding that predated known history. Instead of revealing it immediately, they created these repositories to preserve it until humanity had developed the wisdom to use it properly. Emily's inherited memories helped her understand the true scope of the Guardian network. The repositories weren't just storage facilities. They were nodes in a vast system designed to guide human technological development along a more balanced path. Each site contained pieces of a larger vision, one that emphasized harmony with natural principles, rather than their exploitation. Dr. Thompson's analysis of the newly discovered chambers revealed something unexpected. "These aren't just colonial-era constructions," he said, examining material samples. "Some of these components show signs of much older origins. The Guardians didn't invent all of this technology. They found some of it and integrated it with their own innovations." The afternoon brought another surprise, as Emily's connection to the repository triggered a new type of holographic display. Instead of technical schematics, it showed historical scenes, moments when the Guardians had made their most crucial discoveries. Through these recordings, preserved with incredible clarity, they watched William Blackwood and his colleagues uncover evidence of advanced scientific knowledge in unexpected places. "They found it during the war," Professor Harrison narrated, watching the scenes unfold. "While establishing supply lines and building fortifications, they discovered sites containing technological artifacts that didn't match any known level of development. Rather than risk this knowledge being misused in the conflict, they created the repositories to preserve it safely." The federal research teams had begun coordinating with other activated sites across the country. Each repository was revealing its own pieces of the larger picture. In Virginia, they found preserved documents describing advanced energy systems. Pennsylvania's site contained information about sustainable materials development. Each discovery demonstrated principles that modern science was only beginning to understand. Emily's genetic connection proved crucial in understanding these revelations. The inherited wisdom passed down through her bloodline helped her recognize patterns that others missed. "The Guardians weren't just hiding individual discoveries," she explained, accessing deep genetic memories. "They were preserving an entire framework of scientific understanding, one that developed in harmony with natural laws rather than trying to overcome them." As evening approached, the repository entered what appeared to be its final activation phase. The central chamber's systems began correlating data from all connected sites, creating a comprehensive picture of the Guardian's legacy. What emerged was far more than just a collection of advanced technology. It was a roadmap for human development that spanned centuries. "Your ancestor and his colleagues," Agent Marshall told Emily, "they created something extraordinary. These repositories don't just preserve knowledge, they protect wisdom. Each discovery comes with an understanding of its implications, its proper use, its potential for both benefit and harm." The holographic systems now displayed a vision of technological development that bridged past and future. Ancient principles merged with modern understanding, creating possibilities that neither age could have achieved alone. The Guardians had designed their network not just to preserve knowledge, but to guide its rediscovery in a way that ensured responsible use. Dr. Chen found references to this process in newly decoded texts. "They called it the awakening," she translated, "a time when humanity would be ready to rediscover these principles and use them wisely." The repositories weren't just waiting for technological advancement. They were waiting for ethical development to catch up. As night fell over Blackwood Farm, Emily stood in the chamber that had changed everything, watching centuries of preserved knowledge come alive around her. Her ancestors' legacy had turned out to be far more than just scientific discoveries or advanced technology. It was a bridge between past and future, a carefully preserved path to human development that emphasized wisdom alongside innovation. But even as they marveled at these revelations, new questions emerged. How would this ancient knowledge integrate with modern technology? What changes would it bring to human society? And perhaps most importantly, what final secrets still waited to be revealed as the repository network approached its full activation? The fourth morning of the repository's activation began with an event that no one could have predicted. As sunrise touched the barn's weathered timbers, all 12 known Guardian sites activated simultaneously, their combined energy signatures creating patterns that satellites could detect from orbit. At Blackwood Farm, the central chamber's holographic systems expanded dramatically, filling the space with light and information that demanded to be understood. Emily stood at the center of it all, her genetic connection to the repository network. Now fully awakened, the inherited wisdom passed down through generations of her family had prepared her for this moment, though none could have guessed its true significance. Around her, the chamber hummed with power that had waited centuries to be unleashed. "It's not just showing us technology anymore," she said, watching as new information cascaded through the holographic displays. "The repositories are revealing why the Guardians went to such extraordinary lengths to preserve their discoveries. What they found, it changes everything we thought we knew about human history." Professor Harrison's instruments were recording unprecedented levels of activity. "The energy signatures we're detecting," he reported, checking his readings multiple times in disbelief. "They match patterns we've recently discovered at archaeological sites around the world, sites that are thousands of years older than the Revolutionary War." Dr. Chen's translation team had made a crucial breakthrough in decoding the Guardian's most protected documents. "They didn't just discover this technology during the Revolution," she explained, her voice trembling with excitement. "They found evidence that advanced scientific knowledge had existed on Earth before. The repositories weren't just preserving their own discoveries, they were protecting rediscovered wisdom from humanity's distant past." Agent Marshall received urgent communications from other sites as similar revelations emerged across the network. In Virginia, researchers had uncovered documents describing ancient power generation systems that had once spanned continents. The Pennsylvania repository revealed metallurgical techniques that suggested advanced technological understanding had existed long before recorded history. "Your ancestor and the other Guardians," Marshall told Emily, "they realized they had stumbled upon something extraordinary. During the Revolution, while establishing hidden supply routes and building fortifications, they found artifacts and information that proved humanity had possessed advanced scientific knowledge in the distant past, knowledge that had been lost or hidden for millennia." The central chamber's holographic systems began displaying historical scenes that defied conventional understanding. They watched as William Blackwood and his colleagues discovered hidden chambers beneath colonial structures, uncovering evidence of technological advancement that shouldn't have existed. The Guardians hadn't just been protecting their own innovations, they were preserving rediscovered knowledge that could change humanity's understanding of its own history. Dr. Thompson's analysis of the repository's construction revealed new layers of significance. "The barn itself," he explained, examining newly exposed architectural elements, "it's built on top of something much older. The Guardians didn't just choose this location randomly. They built here because they detected energy signatures from ancient structures buried deep below. Emily's genetic connection to the repository network allowed her to access deeper levels of understanding. Through inherited memories, she began to grasp the true scope of what the Guardians had discovered. They found proof that humanity had achieved advanced scientific understanding before, she shared, watching ancient knowledge merge with modern comprehension in her mind. But something had happened, some event or decision that caused this knowledge to be hidden away, preserved only in scattered repositories around the world. The afternoon brought representatives from scientific institutions worldwide as the implications of their discoveries began to spread. The Guardian repositories hadn't just preserved colonial-era innovations. They had protected evidence of a legacy of human advancement that stretched back far beyond known history. The Guardians made a choice, Professor Harrison explained, studying records of their deliberations. When they discovered this ancient knowledge during the Revolution, they realized humanity wasn't ready to receive it all at once. So they created these repositories, designed to protect and gradually reintroduce this understanding when our ethical development had caught up with our technological capabilities. The chamber's systems continued revealing layers of truth that had waited centuries to be understood. The holographic displays showed connections between Guardian sites and other older repositories scattered across the globe. What had seemed like isolated colonial-era structures were actually part of a vast network of preserved knowledge, some components dating back thousands of years. Dr. Chen found passages in William's personal journals that shed light on the Guardians' true purpose. They saw parallels between their time and ours, she translated, a period of rapid advancement without corresponding wisdom. They feared humanity would repeat past cycles of discovery and loss. These repositories weren't just for preserving knowledge, they were created to help break that cycle. As evening approached, the repository network entered what appeared to be its final phase of activation. Energy signatures from all 12 sites converged, creating patterns that suggested preparation for a major revelation. The Blackwood chamber, serving as a primary hub, began coordinating this unified response. Emily stood in the center of the chamber, her inherited understanding helping her grasp the significance of what was about to happen. The Guardians hadn't just been revolutionary-era inventors or protectors of ancient knowledge. They had been part of a much longer chain of preservation, stretching back through history, keeping crucial wisdom safe until humanity was truly ready to receive it. What we're about to witness, Agent Marshall said, watching the chamber's systems build towards something unprecedented, isn't just the revelation of colonial-era secrets or even ancient technology. The Guardians preserved something far more significant, evidence of humanity's true potential and a path to reclaiming understanding that was lost ages ago. The holographic displays began showing images that merged past and future, ancient wisdom and modern innovation, combining to create possibilities that neither age could have achieved alone. The repositories weren't just revealing lost technology, they were showing humanity a way forward that balanced advancement with wisdom, innovation with responsibility. But as the network approached its final activation, new questions arose. What event in humanity's distant past had caused such advanced knowledge to be hidden away? How would modern society handle the reintegration of this ancient wisdom? And what final revelations still waited to emerge as the Guardian repositories prepared to share their greatest secrets? The fifth day dawned at Blackwood Farm with a sense of impending transformation. The repository network's unified activation had drawn international attention, with scientific teams from around the world converging on the 12 Guardian sites. At the barn, Emily's connection to the systems had evolved beyond simple access. She was now experiencing direct understanding of knowledge that had been preserved for millennia. The integration is happening faster than we anticipated, Agent Marshall reported, watching as Emily effortlessly interpreted complex technical data that had puzzled experts for days. The Guardian repositories aren't just revealing information. They're actively helping humanity assimilate this ancient understanding. Professor Harrison's monitoring equipment detected unprecedented patterns of neural activity in those working closely with the activated sites. It's as if the repositories are teaching us how to comprehend their knowledge, he explained, reviewing brain scan data. The technology isn't just presenting information, it's helping our minds evolve to understand it. The morning brought the first practical demonstrations of integrated Guardian knowledge. In the chamber's testing area, Emily worked with Dr. Thompson to activate a device that demonstrated principles of energy generation far beyond current technology. It's not just advanced, Thompson observed, measuring its output. It's perfectly integrated with natural systems. No waste, no harmful emissions, just pure harmony with environmental processes. Dr. Chen's research team had made significant progress understanding the historical context of these revelations. The Guardians discovered evidence of a time when humanity had achieved this harmony before, she explained, comparing ancient texts with repository data. Their repositories weren't just preserving technology, they were protecting the memory of a different way of living with advanced knowledge. The federal teams had begun coordinating the integration of Guardian technology with modern systems. Initial tests showed remarkable compatibility, as if the ancient knowledge had been preserved in a way that anticipated future technological development. The repositories weren't just storage facilities. They were sophisticated teaching tools designed to guide humanity's advancement. Emily's inherited understanding proved crucial in this integration process. Through her genetic connection to the Guardian network, she could perceive how different technologies were meant to work together. It's like seeing two parts of the same picture, she explained, helping scientists bridge the gap between ancient and modern innovations. The repositories are showing us how to combine the best of both worlds. Mid-morning brought a significant breakthrough. The chamber's holographic systems began displaying what appeared to be a global network of energy distribution, one that had existed thousands of years ago. They didn't just have advanced technology, Professor Harrison realized, studying the patterns. They had achieved a level of worldwide cooperation and technological harmony that we're only beginning to imagine. The implications of these discoveries spread quickly through the scientific community. At other Guardian sites, researchers reported similar revelations. The Pennsylvania repository demonstrated materials science that could revolutionize manufacturing while eliminating environmental impact. Virginia's site revealed transportation systems that worked in perfect harmony with natural forces. Your ancestor and the other Guardians, Agent Marshall told Emily, they weren't just revolutionary-era inventors who found ancient technology. They were part of a continuous line of preservers stretching back through history. Each generation protected this knowledge until humanity was ready to understand it again. The afternoon brought representatives from major technological companies and research institutions, all eager to begin integrating Guardian knowledge into modern applications. But the repositories had been designed with safeguards against misuse. The technology would only reveal itself to those who demonstrated understanding of its ethical implications. Look at how the system responds, Dr. Thompson noted, watching the chamber's reactions to different approaches. When someone tries to access the technology for purely commercial or military purposes, it remains dormant. But when the intention is harmony and beneficial development, it opens up completely. Emily's connection to the repository network helped her understand the significance of these safeguards. The Guardians weren't just protecting advanced technology, she explained, accessing inherited memories. They were preserving a way of thinking about progress, one that emphasized responsibility and wisdom alongside innovation. As evening approached, the integration of Guardian knowledge began showing immediate effects. The energy field generated by the barn had expanded, creating a zone of enhanced natural harmony that affected everything within its range. Plants grew more vigorously, water became clearer, and even the air seemed fresher within the fields. Influence. Dr. Chen discovered references to this effect in William's journals. The Guardians called it resonant integration, she translated. When their technology activated fully, it didn't just provide advanced capabilities, it helped restore natural balance to the surrounding environment. The global implications of these discoveries were becoming clear. The Guardian repositories weren't just revealing lost technology. They were showing humanity a path to advancement that could solve many of its current challenges. Clean energy, environmental restoration, sustainable development, all were possible through the integration of this preserved knowledge. But even as the practical applications became apparent, deeper questions emerged. The repositories were clearly building towards something more significant, some final revelation that would explain not just how this ancient knowledge had been preserved, but why it had been hidden in the first place. As night fell over Blackwood Farm, Emily stood in the chamber that had changed everything, watching as ancient wisdom and modern understanding continued to merge. The barn that had protected her family's legacy for generations had become a gateway to humanity's forgotten potential. The repository network was entering its final phase of activation. Tomorrow would bring the culmination of centuries of preservation, the moment when the Guardian's ultimate purpose would finally be revealed. But as Emily prepared for what was to come, she couldn't help wondering, were they truly ready for the full truth of humanity's forgotten past? The final day of the repository's activation began in profound silence. Before dawn, the 12 Guardian sites across the country simultaneously ceased all external communications, their energy signatures focusing inward as they prepared for what the Guardians had called the ultimate revelation. At Blackwood Farm, Emily stood in the central chamber, her inherited connection to the network stronger than ever, waiting for the moment her ancestor had prepared for over 2 centuries ago. "Something's different," she told the assembled team, watching as the chamber's holographic systems began displaying entirely new patterns. The repositories aren't just sharing information anymore. They're about to show us why all this knowledge was hidden in the first place. Professor Harrison's instruments detected energy signatures unlike anything they'd recorded before. "The power readings are off the scale," he reported, "but it's not just energy we're measuring. These patterns suggest some kind of coherent information field, as if the repositories are tapping into a network that exists outside normal space-time." The morning's first revelation came as sunrise touched the barn's eastern wall. The chamber's holographic systems activated fully, displaying not just technical data or historical records, but what appeared to be direct memories from humanity's distant past. Through these preserved experiences, they witnessed scenes from a time when human civilization had achieved technological advancement far beyond modern capabilities. "This is incredible," Dr. Chen breathed, watching as ancient knowledge unfolded before them. The Guardians didn't just find scattered artifacts or technical documents. They discovered proof that humanity had once achieved a level of development that unified scientific understanding with natural harmony. Agent Marshall's team documented everything as the repository revealed humanity's forgotten history. They saw images of cities that operated in perfect environmental balance, transportation systems that defied current physics, and energy networks that powered entire continents without environmental impact. But something happened. Emily narrated, accessing deep genetic memories as the story unfolded. Humanity reached a crucial decision point, a moment when technological power could either lead to greater harmony or potential destruction. The Guardians weren't just revolutionary-era inventors, they were the latest in a long line of preservers who protected this knowledge after humanity chose to hide it away. Dr. Thompson's analysis of the revealed data supported this extraordinary claim. "Look at these patterns," he said, comparing modern measurements with ancient records. "The technology we're seeing wasn't lost by accident. It was deliberately preserved in repositories around the world, hidden until humanity evolved enough to use it wisely." The afternoon brought the repository network's final activation sequence. All 12 sites synchronized their energy fields, creating a harmonious resonance that could be detected across the continent. At Blackwood Farm, the barn's central chamber transformed one last time, revealing its ultimate purpose. The repositories aren't just storage facilities, Professor Harrison realized, watching as new systems activated. They're restoration points, nodes in a global network designed to help humanity reconnect with its forgotten wisdom. The Guardians created them to guide us back to the understanding we once possessed. Emily's connection to the repository helped her grasp the full significance of what they were witnessing. The Guardians had discovered that humanity's history wasn't a straight line of progressive development. Instead, it was a cycle of advancement and retreat, with each cycle preserving crucial knowledge for future rediscovery. "Your ancestor and his colleagues," Agent Marshall explained, "they recognized the parallels between their time and ours. They saw humanity approaching another point of critical decision, a moment when our technological power could either lead to destruction or transformation. These repositories were designed to help us make a better choice this time. The Chamber's final revelations showed why the knowledge had been hidden. In humanity's distant past, technological advancement had outpaced wisdom, leading to conflicts that threatened global destruction. Rather than risk losing everything, the most advanced civilizations had chosen to preserve their knowledge in hidden repositories, protecting it until humanity evolved enough to use it responsibly. Dr. Chen found confirmation of this in the Guardian's most protected documents. "They called it the Great Preservation," she translated, "a choice made by our ancestors to step back from the brink of destruction, hiding their most advanced knowledge until future generations could rediscover it with greater wisdom." As evening approached, the repository network began its final transformation. The energy fields generated by all 12 sites expanded, creating zones of enhanced harmony that affected everything within their range. Plants flourished, water became clearer, and the very air seemed to vibrate with renewed vitality. "The technology isn't just being revealed," Emily explained, experiencing the change through her genetic connection. "It's being reintegrated into the world, helping restore natural balance that was lost centuries ago. The Guardians designed these repositories not just to preserve knowledge, but to help heal the damage caused by its absence." The implications for modern society were profound. The Guardian repositories offered solutions to humanity's greatest challenges: clean energy, environmental restoration, sustainable development. But more importantly, they provided a framework for using advanced technology in harmony with natural systems. As night fell over Blackwood Farm, Emily stood with her team in the transformed chamber. The barn that had protected her family's legacy had become something far more significant, a bridge between humanity's forgotten wisdom and its future potential. "The repositories have served their purpose," she said, watching as the holographic system settled into a steady glow. "They've shown us what's possible when technological power is balanced with wisdom. The choice of what to do with this knowledge is now ours. The Blackwood barn would continue to stand as a testament to the Guardian's vision, its ancient timbers now housing technology that bridged past and future. The financial pressures that had once threatened the farm had vanished. The site's historical and scientific significance now ensured its preservation for generations to come. But more importantly, the revelation of the Guardian repositories had given humanity something it desperately needed: hope. Hope that advanced technology could coexist with environmental harmony. Hope that ancient wisdom could guide modern development. Hope that humanity could learn from its past to create a better future. As stars appeared above the transformed barn, Emily thought about her ancestor William Blackwood and the choice he had made to protect this knowledge for future generations. The repository's secrets had finally been revealed, but in many ways, humanity's real journey was just beginning. 1 month after the Guardian repository's activation, Blackwood Farm had transformed beyond recognition. The ancient barn still stood proudly against the Berkshire sky, but it now served as the center of a thriving research complex dedicated to integrating ancient wisdom with modern technology. The financial struggles that had once threatened the property were long forgotten, replaced by a new purpose that would ensure its preservation for generations to come. Emily stood in her father's study, now converted into a coordination center for the global Guardian network. Screens displayed real-time data from all 12 sites, showing the steady expansion of their harmonious influence across the continent. The integration of the repository's knowledge had begun changing society in ways that even the Guardians might not have anticipated. The environmental effects have exceeded all projections, Dr. Thompson reported, showing her the latest satellite imagery. Zones of enhanced natural vitality now radiated from each Guardian site, creating expanding circles of ecological restoration. Within these areas, pollution disappeared, ecosystems regenerated, and the natural world seemed to remember its original state of balance. Professor Harrison's research team had documented extraordinary developments in human consciousness within these zones. People aren't just accepting the technology, he explained, reviewing brain scan data. They're experiencing an awakening of dormant abilities, as if the repositories are helping humanity remember capabilities we'd forgotten we possessed. The morning brought a visit from Agent Marshall, now director of the newly formed Guardian Integration Agency. Sterling Development has withdrawn all their lawsuits, she announced with satisfaction. More importantly, their research into the repositories led to a complete transformation of their corporate mission. They're now leading efforts to implement Guardian technology for environmental restoration. Dr. Chen shared discoveries from her continued translation work. The Guardians knew this would happen, she said, showing Emily newly decoded passages from William's journals. They predicted that once humanity reconnected with this ancient wisdom, the change would be self-sustaining. Each person who experiences the repository's influence becomes a carrier of this renewed understanding. The global impact of the Guardian revelations had far exceeded anyone's expectations. Major technology companies had shifted their focus to implementing repository-inspired innovations. Energy grids were being redesigned based on principles of natural harmony. Transportation systems were being transformed to work in concert with environmental forces rather than against them. Emily's role had evolved as well. Her genetic connection to the repository network made her a crucial bridge between ancient wisdom and modern application. Other Guardian descendants had emerged at different sites, each contributing their inherited understanding to the integration process. What's happening now goes beyond anything we initially imagined, she explained to a gathering of international scientists. The repositories aren't just giving us advanced technology, they're helping us remember what it means to be human. This knowledge was hidden away not because it was dangerous, but because it needed to be rediscovered with wisdom. The afternoon brought new evidence of the repository's influence. Agricultural areas near Guardian sites reported unprecedented crop yields without artificial inputs. Water sources showed spontaneous purification. Even weather patterns seemed to be shifting toward greater natural harmony. Professor Harrison's latest analysis revealed why these changes were occurring. The repositories aren't just affecting technology or the environment, he explained. They're helping restore natural systems that existed before humanity's decision to hide this knowledge. What we're seeing is the world remembering its original state of balance. The transformation wasn't limited to physical effects. Communities near Guardian sites reported increased cooperation, enhanced creativity, and a natural tendency towards sustainable practices. It was as if the repository's influence was awakening an inherited memory of how to live in harmony with advanced technology. Your ancestor and the other Guardians, Agent Marshall told Emily, they didn't just preserve technology, they protected a way of understanding reality itself. Now that it's being reintegrated, people are naturally remembering how to live with this wisdom. As evening approached, Emily gathered with her team in the chamber that had started everything. The holographic systems now displayed a real-time map of the repository's influence spreading across the globe. What had begun in a mysterious old barn in the Berkshires was becoming a worldwide awakening. The Guardians created these repositories during humanity's darkest hour, Dr. Chen reflected, watching the display. They protected this knowledge through centuries of development, waiting for the moment when we would be ready to remember what we'd forgotten. Now that remembering has begun, there's no going back. The Blackwood Barn had become more than just a historical landmark or scientific marvel. It stood as a symbol of humanity's potential to unite advanced technology with natural wisdom. The repository network wasn't just revealing lost knowledge. It was showing a path forward that balanced progress with responsibility. Emily found one final message from William, hidden in a chamber that only revealed itself after full integration had begun. To those who have helped humanity remember, it read, know that your work is just beginning. What we preserved was not just knowledge, but the understanding that true advancement comes from harmony rather than conquest. The future you create will be limited only by your wisdom in using what has been remembered. As stars appeared above the transformed barn, Emily thought about the journey that had brought them here. What had started as a mystery behind locked doors had become humanity's greatest discovery, not of new technology, but of forgotten wisdom. The repositories had served their purpose, awakening humanity to its own forgotten potential. The Blackwood Barn would continue to stand, no longer just a guardian of secrets, but a beacon of remembered wisdom. Its story would be told for generations, not as a tale of hidden technology or ancient mysteries, but as the moment when humanity finally remembered how to move forward by looking back. And so our story ends, where all great journeys of discovery should, not with an ending, but with a new beginning. The Guardian repositories had shown us what was possible when wisdom guides progress, when ancient knowledge meets modern understanding, and when humanity remembers its own forgotten potential. The greatest discovery, it turned out, wasn't hidden in the mysterious barn or preserved in ancient repositories. It was the reminder that true advancement comes not from conquering nature or forcing progress, but from remembering how to live in harmony with the wisdom we had once possessed and could now finally reclaim.